I found a perfect circle burned into my cornfield on August 15th, 1983, about 50 feet across. Perfect geometry. The corn inside was carbonized down to black ash. I'm a third-generation farmer in Nebraska. I know my land. I know fire. I know weather. But I had never seen anything like this. And the night before I found it, I saw what made it. My name is Tom Hendricks. In the summer of 1983, I was 42 years old, living on the same farm my grandfather built back in 1920. 300 acres of corn in the heart of Nebraska. My wife Sarah, my son Billy, who was 14 at the time, and me. We had a simple life. Good life. August in Nebraska means one thing: harvest time. The corn was ready, tall, healthy, golden under that endless prairie sky. I'd wake up at 5 every morning, work the fields until the sun went down. I knew every acre of that land, every irrigation line, every fence post. I could walk those fields blindfolded and tell you exactly where I was just by the feel of the soil under my boots. That's why what happened next shook me so deeply, because I knew that land, and I knew something was wrong the moment the silence hit. August 14th started like any other day. Hot, humid, the kind of heat that makes the air shimmer above the fields. I spent the morning checking equipment, making sure everything was ready for harvest the next week. Sarah made dinner around 7, pot roast, mashed potatoes. Billy complained about having to help with the dishes. Normal. Everything was completely normal. After dinner, I stepped out onto the porch like I did every night. Sarah joined me. We sat there watching the sun go down, drinking iced tea, listening to the crickets start their song. The sky was clear, not a cloud anywhere. It was a new moon that night, so when the stars came out, they came out bright. Thousands of them. It must have been around 10:30 when Sarah noticed it first. "Tom," she said, "look at that." I looked where she was pointing, west, over the far fields. There was a light, not like a star, not like an airplane. It was low on the horizon, maybe a mile out, right over my land. At first, I thought maybe it was a fire, but it wasn't orange. It was white, bright white, with a pale blue edge to it. And it wasn't flickering like fire does. It was steady. Sarah asked if I thought it was the miller's place. Our neighbors, 3 miles west. Maybe they had some kind of emergency, but something felt wrong. The light was too bright, too focused. And then I noticed something else. The crickets had stopped. Complete silence. No insects, no birds, nothing. Just that light in the distance and the sound of my own heartbeat getting louder in my ears. "I'm going to go check it out," I told Sarah. She didn't argue, but I could see the concern in her eyes. "Be careful," she said. Billy heard us talking and came to the door. "Can I come, Dad?" "No," I told him. "Stay here with your mother. I'll be back in 20 minutes. I grabbed my flashlight from the hook by the door, walked over to my truck. A '78 Ford F-150, nothing fancy, but it ran solid. Started the engine and headed down the dirt road that cuts through the property. My headlights pushed through the darkness, cutting between the walls of corn on either side. The light ahead was getting brighter, brighter than my headlights even. I kept driving, maybe half a mile down, when the radio started acting up. Static, loud, harsh static. I hadn't even had it on. It just came on by itself, full volume, white noise screaming through the speakers. I reached over and shut it off. Then the engine sputtered, once, twice. The headlights dimmed for a second. I slowed down, my hands tight on the wheel. Every instinct I had was telling me to turn around, go back to the house, lock the doors. But I kept going. I had to know what was in my field. I drove for another minute before the engine started coughing again. The whole truck was shaking. The headlights flickered, dimmed, then came back. That's when I decided to stop. I pulled over to the side of the dirt road and killed the engine. Sat there in the dark for a moment, watching that light through the windshield. It was so bright now I could see the corn stalks lit up like it was daytime out there. But the light had a strange quality to it. Cold, artificial, not like the sun, not like anything I'd ever seen. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped out of the truck. The air hit me immediately. It was cold. In the middle of August, in Nebraska, the night air was cold enough that I could see my breath. My arms broke out in goosebumps. And that silence. God, that silence was unnatural. I'd lived on that farm my entire life. There was always sound, always wind, always insects, always something. But right then, there was nothing. Just my boots on the dirt and my own breathing. I started walking toward the light. The corn on both sides of me stood 8 feet tall, blocking my view. I couldn't see what was making the light, just the glow above the stalks, pulsing slightly, like it was breathing. My flashlight started to flicker. I smacked it against my palm a couple times, but it kept dimming and brightening on its own. Then I heard it, a sound, low, deep, like a hum. So low I felt it more than heard it. It vibrated in my chest, in my teeth, a constant mechanical hum. I stopped walking. My hand was shaking. The flashlight beam wobbled across the corn in front of me. Every part of me wanted to run, get back in the truck, go home. Forget I ever saw that light. But I couldn't. I don't know why. Curiosity, stubbornness. Maybe I just needed to know, needed to see with my own eyes what was sitting in the middle of my field. I took a breath and pushed forward into the corn. The stalks were taller than me. I had to push them aside as I walked, the leaves scraping against my arms and face. The light ahead was so bright now I had to squint. My eyes were watering. The hum was getting louder. I could feel it in my bones. A pressure building in my head, behind my eyes. The air smelled wrong, metallic, sharp, like after a lightning strike, but stronger. I pushed through another row of corn, and suddenly the stalks in front of me were bent. Not broken. Bent. All of them leaning away from something, pressed flat against the ground in a circular pattern. I was at the edge of it. I stopped. My breath caught in my throat. The light was right there, maybe 30 feet ahead. Blinding. I raised my hand to shield my eyes, and then I saw it. It was hovering, maybe 10, 12 feet off the ground, silent except for that low hum. A disc, metallic, smooth, no seams, no rivets, nothing. Just a perfect silver surface reflecting that intense light back at itself. I'd say it was about 50 feet across, maybe more. It was hard to judge because the light was so bright, but it was massive, rotating slowly, so slowly I almost didn't notice at first. Around the edge, there were lights, not bulbs, not anything I could describe properly. They moved in sequence, chasing each other around the rim, white, then blue, then back to white. And underneath, pointing straight down at my corn, was a beam, solid, like you could reach out and touch it, bright blue-white, illuminating a perfect circle of ground below. The corn directly beneath it was pressed completely flat, burned. I could see smoke rising, even from where I stood. I couldn't move. My legs wouldn't work. I just stood there at the edge of the tree line, at the edge of that circle of flattened corn, staring at this thing. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst. My mouth was dry. I wanted to yell, to run, to do something, but my body wouldn't respond. I don't know how long I stood there. Seconds, minutes. Time felt wrong, stretched out. The air around me was crackling. I could feel static electricity on my skin, making the hair on my arms stand straight up. My ears were popping like I was on an airplane, and then I felt it, the feeling of being watched, not from the craft, from inside it. I couldn't see windows, couldn't see anything but that smooth metallic surface. But I knew something was looking at me. My chest tightened. I couldn't breathe right, couldn't think straight. And then the beam intensified. The light got brighter, wider, so bright I had to close my eyes. The hum got louder, higher pitched, climbing up and up until it was almost a whine. I threw my arm over my face. The heat hit me like opening an oven door, intense, radiating from that beam. I stumbled backward, tripped over a cornstalk, fell into the dirt. When I looked up, shielding my eyes, the craft was rising, slowly at first, then faster. The beam cut off. The lights stopped rotating. It went straight up. No sound except that hum getting quieter and quieter as it climbed. I watched it go up into the stars, higher and higher. And then, maybe 1,000 feet up, it just shot off, horizontally, faster than anything I'd ever seen. One moment it was there, the next it was gone, just gone. The silence came back, but different now, heavier. I lay there in the dirt, breathing hard, staring up at the empty sky where it had been. And then the crickets started again. I don't know how long I stayed on the ground. Could have been 30 seconds, could have been 5 minutes. My sense of time was completely gone. Finally, I pushed myself up. My hands were shaking. My legs felt weak, but I managed to stand. The first thing I noticed was the smell. Burning, strong, like someone had set a tire fire, but sharper, chemical. I looked toward where the craft had been hovering. The corn was gone, not just flattened, gone. In a perfect circle, maybe 50 feet across, the corn had been burned down to nothing but black stalks and ash. I took a step forward, then another. My boots crunched on something. I looked down. The ground was scorched. The soil had turned black, cracked like dried mud in a drought. But this wasn't from any drought. This was heat, intense heat. I walked slowly toward the center of the circle. Every step, the destruction was the same. Perfect. Uniform. The corn that had been standing 8 feet tall that morning was now carbonized stumps, maybe 6 inches high, crumbling to ash when the wind touched them. When I reached the center, I stopped, knelt down, put my hand on the ground. It was hot, not burning hot, but warm, like pavement in summer. I pulled my hand back and looked at my palm, black, covered in a fine black residue. I stood up and turned in a slow circle, looking at the edge of the burn pattern. That's when it really hit me. The line was perfect, absolutely perfect. On one side, burned black corn. On the other side, untouched green stalks, standing tall like nothing had happened. No gradient, no fade, no transition. Just a hard line, like someone had drawn it with a compass. I walked to the edge and crouched down, examining where the burned corn met the living corn. I touched both. The burned stalk crumbled in my fingers. The green stalk next to it was fine, cool, healthy. Fire doesn't do this. Fire spreads. It follows the wind, follows fuel, burns unevenly. This wasn't fire. This was something else, something controlled, something precise. I pulled a measuring tape from my pocket. I always kept one on me during harvest season. Started measuring the diameter. 50 feet, almost exactly, wall to wall. I measured another section, 50 feet and another 50 feet. A perfect circle. I stood in the center again and looked up at the sky. Clear, stars everywhere, no sign of what I'd just seen. For a moment I wondered if I'd imagined it, if I'd had some kind of episode, heat stroke, hallucination. But then I looked down at the ground, at the burned earth, at my black hands. This was real. This happened. I pulled out my flashlight. It was working again. I swept the beam across the circle one more time, trying to take it all in, trying to make sense of it. But there was no sense to make. There was no rational explanation. Something had been here. Something had done this. And I had seen it. My hands were still shaking when I turned and started walking back toward my truck. I made it back to the truck and just sat there behind the wheel for a minute, hands on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead. My mind was racing. What do I do? Who do I tell? Who's going to believe this? I turned the key. The engine started right up. Radio worked fine. Everything normal, like nothing had happened. I drove back to the house. When I pulled into the driveway, I could see Sarah standing on the porch. She'd been waiting. I got out and walked up to her. She took one look at my face and knew something was wrong. "Tom, what happened? Are you okay?" I didn't know how to start. I just said, "You need to come see something." She called for Billy. The three of us got into the truck, and I drove back out to the field. Didn't say a word the whole way. I couldn't. I didn't have the words yet. When we got close, Sarah saw the light from my headlights reflecting off that blackened circle. "Oh, my God, Tom, what is that?" We got out, walked over to it. Billy was quiet, just staring. Sarah walked the perimeter, same as I had done, touched the burned corn, looked at the perfect edge. Then she looked at me. "Tom, what did this?" I told her everything, the light, the craft, the beam, the way it just vanished into the sky. She didn't say I was crazy. She didn't question me. She'd seen that light, too. She knew something had been out here. Billy asked if we should call someone. The police? The fire department? I didn't know. Part of me wanted to. Part of me was terrified of what people would say, what they'd think. We went back to the house around 2 a.m. None of us slept. At dawn, we went back out. In daylight, it was even more striking. That perfect black circle in the middle of healthy green corn. You could see it from half a mile away. I took pictures, Polaroids, snapped a whole pack of film. Sarah took some too. We wanted proof, evidence, something to show this was real. By mid-morning, word had gotten around. Small towns, you know. Somebody saw us out there. By noon, we had neighbors showing up. The Millers, the Johnsons, people I'd known my whole life. Some of them walked the circle, measured it themselves, touched the ground. Most of them didn't know what to say. Old Frank Miller, he'd been farming longer than me. He stood there shaking his head. "Tom, I've seen lightning strikes. I've seen fires. Hell, I've seen a lot of strange things in 60 years. But I ain't never seen anything like this." A reporter from the local paper came out that afternoon, took photos, interviewed me, asked a lot of questions I didn't have answers to. The article came out 3 days later. Small piece on page 4. Mysterious burn pattern found on local farm. They didn't mention UFOs, didn't mention what I told them I saw, just called it unexplained. A week later, some people from the university came, said they were from the agriculture department. They took soil samples, corn samples, asked more questions. They called me 2 weeks after that. Said the soil showed elevated magnetic readings, higher than normal iron content, burn patterns consistent with extreme localized heat. But they couldn't explain the perfect geometry, couldn't explain how the heat stayed contained like that. They didn't have answers. Nobody did. That circle stayed black for weeks. The ash blew away eventually, but nothing grew back. Just bare dirt, cracked and dead. I tried planting there the next spring. Nothing came up. Tried again the spring after. Still nothing. For 5 years, that spot stayed barren. A perfect 50-foot circle of dead earth in the middle of my cornfield. Every harvest, I'd work around it. Every spring, I'd try planting it again. Nothing. It wasn't until 1988 that grass finally started growing back. Even then, it grew differently. Paler, thinner. You could still see where it had been if you knew what to look for. That night changed everything for me. The way I saw the world, the way I looked at the sky. Before August 14th, 1983, I thought I understood things. I understood farming, weather, the land, the natural order of things. I thought the world made sense. After that night, I realized how little I actually knew, how little any of us know. I still farmed that land for another 20 years. Sold the property in 2003. Moved into town with Sarah. Billy's grown now, has kids of his own. We never talked about it much after those first few weeks. What was there to say? We saw what we saw. We knew what happened. Talking about it didn't change anything. But I never forgot. Not for one day. Sometimes at night, even now, I'll go outside and look up at the stars. And I'll wonder if it's still out there, if they're still out there, watching, observing, doing whatever it is they do. I don't have answers. I don't know what it was. I don't know where it came from or why it chose my field that night. All I know is what I saw and what I found the next morning. A perfect circle burned into my land, 50 feet across, precise as a machine. People can believe me or not. That's their choice. I'm not trying to convince anyone. I'm just telling you what happened. I'm 84 years old now. I don't have any reason to lie, no reason to make things up. I'm just a farmer who saw something he couldn't explain, and I wanted to tell this story before I'm gone. Because it happened. It was real. That circle was real. And somewhere out there, under the Nebraska sky, if you know exactly where to look, you can still see where the grass grows different, where nothing grew for 5 years. That's my proof. That's all I have. But it's enough for me. If you've seen something you can't explain, if you have a story that still keeps you up at night, leave a comment below. I'd love to read it. I'll be sharing more stories like this every week. Some things can't be explained, but they can be remembered. Until next time.